Բարի եղեք Աստագորատերտի Արսեն Ճալասյան ժողովասենյակ այսօրվա մեր նույնը կվերապերի հայոց ցեղասպանության եւ թկական ճշտողական քաղաքականության մեր հյուրն է Պատմաբան Իւմիթ բարի եղեք
Բարի դեսան շնորհակալ եմ որ հրավիրել
First of all I want to ask you a question when you look at Turkish history the Republican history of Turkey we see that there are many governments have changed, many parties have reached power, but there is a constant policy of denial. Governments have changed, but that's a constant, that hasn't changed. Why is it so?
First and foremost, yes, that's a valid point, but I have a different point of view regarding the state denialism, or the denialism as a whole in Turkey. We shouldn't only focus on the denialism of the Turkish state. Okay, the denialism of Turkish state is quite powerful. They have their own strengths, and each and every year the Turkish government is financing some scholars abroad in the United States for consolidating this denialism policy and at the domestic level as well. But why the state denialism is so strong in Turkey, according to my point of view, because of the fact that the many sections of society, different sections of society in Turkey give their support and consent to this state denialism. And of course there is certain section of society who is opposed to that denialism, who are trying to, adopt with that denialism, but usually the Turkish society, the Turkish public opinion, the Turkish community is not still ready to come to terms with the Armenian Genocide, to reckoning the dark annals of the Turkish history. That's the reason why, since they don't want to accept Armenian Genocide, recognize that, and they don't want to face with that, they do support the denialism policy of Turkey, which is ongoing, which is constant, which is omnipotent in each and every year. That's the reason why the state denialism is so strong in Turkey. If this denialism breaks up among different sections of society in Turkey, which also reflects, which will have a huge impact on the state denialism as well.
Within that concept, that being said, do you see a difference between AKP and the former governments? Because we have seen Erdogan make some gestures. We have seen lately a message from Davutoglu, however insignificant and that message is. Is there something towards the positive in that?
Yeah. At the very beginning, when the Prime Minister Erdogan, he was Prime Minister back then, so when he delivered this condolence message, which I found quite problematic in content, but nevertheless, it was a stepping stone in Turkey. It was a, let's say, so-called groundbreaking kind of event, because for the first time, at the state level, an official Turkish Prime Minister was talking about, let's say, the tragic events and the pains that Armenians suffered during the World War I, and he made a point on that without naming it, without terming it, without describing it. Although the content of the message was quite problematic, nevertheless, it was a very, very positive development. It was a positive consideration, and that let me wait, or not wait, expect more steps, just coming up. But apparently, that just the things haven't take place like that. Things haven't just come out like that. I mean, it was the things appeared as opposed to my own expectations as well, because the last remark of the President Erdogan actually just was kind of a reverse from the condolences message, and it was a disgraceful and shameful invitation, let's say, because invitation, I'm saying a very oxymoron word, but it's a shameful invitation, and I take it and I evaluate it as a reverse gesture, reverse act, or reverse policy from our condolences message, which create a lot of expectations in me, but which didn't happen actually. Of course, there is a strategy behind it. Unfortunately, President Erdogan sacrificed the Armenian problem or Armenian issue, or the prospective resolution of Armenian issue, he sacrificed that issue to election campaign, election strategy. So I don't want to reduce all these, developments to election strategy, but it matters a lot. So now elections are coming up. There is this. The government believes that idea. At least there is this conspiration theory that all the opposition forces in Turkey are trying to overthrow the president and stuff like that. And of course, they feed all these fears of the government and the Erdogan. That's why, for instance, he both sacrifices now the Kurdish resolution process and the perspective for possible resolution or possible dialogue between Armenia, the possible resolution of the Armenian issue and Armenian question in his mind, of course, to election campaign. Now, every single political step that he wants to make is being formulated around the election.
Now, if we come to the issue of Armenian genocide, how do you see the question of reparations?
Question of reparations. So, first and foremost, I just want to go back to your first question, why the state denialism is so strong, because there's an interlinkage between your question and the state denialism and the restitution and reparation. Property issue, the immovable and movable properties of deported Armenians, deported Ottoman Armenians, Ottoman citizens, Armenians. There were, certain rules and regulations which were applied to those properties, and which were known as abundant, so-called abundant properties. And the government, Union Progress Party first and foremost, and then Republican, during the Republican periods, there were these laws, which were called abundant properties laws. According to these laws, most of the properties of Armenians, deported Armenians, were confiscated. There were some plunders and also spoliations mostly, but also there were some confiscated properties of Armenians, and those properties were acquired by provincial elite and local notables within the many cities, many vilayets of Anatolia. And now, if the Turkish government recognizes genocide, of course, restitution and reparation, matter come into scene. It's quite normal, like in the case of Holocaust, for instance. So, and these local elites and provincial elites, they had become urban bourgeoisie after 60s, after 70s and 80s, and now they are big families. They have multinational corporations and amalgamations and so on and so forth, and other sections of society also. They also make use of Armenian properties. Many ordinary people, especially these local elites, they participated in deportation and the massacres of Armenian atrocities,
and they profited from
in return for acquiring those properties. In my case, for instance, in the case of Aintab, you can see this situation in a clear-cut way. It's very concrete. There was a huge support, enormous support of local elites and notables, especially in Aintab, to deport the Armenians and to massacre them in order to get their properties back. CUP, Union Progress Party, gave such a carrot to those people in order to get their consent and support. You cannot execute mass killings or the mass deportations which ended up genocide without taking consent or support of the society. So that's why restitution and reparation, these two matters are quite related to genocide recognition. Unless you recognize genocide, we can't talk about either reparation or restitution. So we should first make pressure on Turkey in order to recognize genocide, and then the restitution and reparation comes into play automatically. You cannot avoid that. So restitution is pertaining, of course, giving back the properties, movable and immovable properties. What I'm talking about is bonds, insurance, insurance, bonds, houses, all these, lands, and etc. You can, of course, you cannot get the exact property itself, but at least Armenians have right to get the real value of the properties in question. So that means restitution that means reparation. Why state denialism is so strong? And now going back to the first question, because these are all interrelated issues. State denialism is so strong because society supports that. Why society supports that? Because we are talking about a huge, enormous amount of Armenian property which were stolen, which were plundered, which were confiscated, which were liquidated in CUP period first and foremost, and then and by the Kemalist rank and file as well.
We have talked about the question of restitution. How about the reparation? How do you see it? Do you see a land which will be given back to the Armenians, or the issue may be solved in the territorial integrity of Turkey?
As regards to the land issue, I just, we should be rational, we should be realistic, Aftermath of the genocide recognition, as I said, reparation comes into play. In terms of land, or in certain lands, for instance, it's impossible to pinpoint now to locate those lands. I'm talking about the proper lands of individuals, deported Armenians, for instance. You cannot now pinpoint that because all the locations and the reference points have changed over the course of time. So what Armenians demand from the Turkey, to get the real value of those properties, real value, not as a compensation but as a restitution, and of course this process ends up with reparation. So, in terms of legal rules and regulations, Armenians can claim that these properties were possessed by them, belong to them, and in any kind of rules, degree, status, laws of abandoned properties, both during the CUP era and the Republican era, there was no statement that these properties did not belong to Armenians. Within all laws and regulations, there was always a statement that we are administrating those properties on behalf of our citizens, which were supposed to be resettled, relocated. That was the law. So, because otherwise, the government at that time were supposed to be described as, a robber, like that. So, what I would suggest is that on the legal ground, Armenian people can open a lawsuit to the Turkish court within the boundary of Turkey. They should first consume the domestic laws, internal laws in Turkey, and then apply to European Court of Human Rights. Now there is such kind of tendency among the Armenian diaspora, let's say, especially in the United States. People are trying to find out trustworthy and reliable lawyers in Turkey to give power of attorney to them, and then those lawyers, after getting power of attorney, they do have a right to get into title deeds archives in Turkey in order to see who got properties from whom. I'm talking about the whole trajectory, the whole history of the property of a particular individual. And then after having learned that, they can open a lawsuit within Turkish courts, and the court itself has to take the case. The court cannot, refuse the case. The court does not have such a right.
When we look at Turkish intellectuals who recognized Armenian genocide, we have the impression that they are leftists. So why is it that leftists recognize the Armenian genocide? Is that impression correct? And do you see a possibility that other people from the other political spectrum will join these leftist guys?
Yes, it's a valid point. Usually, politically speaking, the leftist, let's say left inclined or people, including liberal Democrats, liberal leftists in Turkey, they are usually proponents of recognition of Armenian genocide in Turkey. But I must say that not the whole movement, not the whole leftist milieu as well, actually, because I was part of that movement when I was, 22 years old, and I didn't have anything about, I didn't have any kind of information regarding the presence of Armenians in my hometown. I had no idea about it. When I came across the Armenians' presence in Iğmit, I was leftist. I did believe in, yes, Armenian genocide happened, but I didn't even have this simple information regarding history of my hometown where I was born. So not the whole leftists are cognizant of the issue either, but there is also a kind of Turkish nationalism. Kemalist nationalism is quite strong in Turkish leftist history. When you look at the history of Turkish or the leftist movement in Turkey, there has been always a strong wing, strong propensities towards Kemalism. So that's the reason why we better specify what kind of leftist movement or leftist, inclination we are talking about. And while leftists, of course, ideologically speaking and politically speaking, they are standing on the leftist spectrum of the political, leftist side of the political spectrum, because they believe in progressive, ideas. They believe in human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of articulation. Even though, for instance, a leftist may not believe in Armenian genocide, but at least as a leftist person, he can defend the freedom of articulation of someone who recognizes Armenian genocide. Something like that. But of course, you cannot see that kind of official political tendency amongst the rightist movement in Turkey, Turkish rights. Of course, ultra-nationalists, I'm not even talking about them. And also, let's say, conservative people, conservative sections of society, and conservative parties or political, let's say, parties or civil society institutions. I believe that in Turkey, this silence, this non-recognition is going to could be broken up by the actions of these conservative Muslims, these conservative sections of society. Because, as we know, during the genocide, during the deportation, there were a number of Muslims, who gave huge efforts, who put, a lot of efforts to save Armenian people, his or her Armenian neighbors, his or her Armenian Akçik or Dğan or something. We heard of a lot of stories like that, which, there is a literature on that, and people, these people, are known as righteous Muslim or righteous individual. Anyway, so I think in Turkey, genocide, the action for genocide recognition is a political, let's say, political movement has to be started by this section of society. I do believe in that, strongly, because this section of society reflects upon the public opinion in Turkey, and they are the majority, as we know, and if they do really believe in their own religion, philosophically, and they do really believe in their religion in content, they must see what happened. They must see and they must face what happened to Armenians, and they must acknowledge that yes, it was a genocide. It was an Armenian genocide, and because their own religion or their own belief should, order that. This is what I'm talking about. I really want to be understood correctly on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to ASPEC.
Thank you.